All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first webinar of the 2020 Minnesota TZD webinar series. My name is Brian Sorensen. I'm the state traffic engineer with the Minnesota Department of Transportation and one of Minnesota's 3 TZD program co-chairs. This would have been the 17th annual Minnesota TZD conference, but as I'm sure many of you are accustomed to by now, we're virtual this year, so we can safely engage with our partners and share current information to help each other in our quest to make a difference in people's lives through traffic safety. This morning's session is the first of 12 webinars highlighting the latest trends of traffic safety initiatives with expert guests sharing a cross-section of topics from the 4 E's of TZD: education, emergency services, enforcement, and engineering. The webinars will run for the next 5 weeks, concluding on November 19th. As part of our kickoff week, we have 2 webinars today, one tomorrow and one Thursday. After our initial kickoff week, the webinars will typically be on Tuesdays and Thursdays, except for election week, get out and vote, where we will have one on Wednesday. You can find the full list of all topics and speakers on the TZD website, minnesotatzd.org, as shown on the bottom of the slide. We hope you can attend as many webinars as possible. There's a ton of great information being shared, and it is, of course, all free. We would like to start out by thanking our hosts, including the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Minnesota Department of Health, Minnesota Department of Public Safety, and the Minnesota Department of Transportation. I know we're all here today because we share a common goal: to eliminate life-changing crashes on our roadways. In Minnesota, the efforts of our TZD program going back to 2003 are clear. We have saved lives. There are thousands of people alive today that otherwise would not be, thanks to the efforts of so many that have been dedicated to traffic safety in Minnesota over the past 17 years. But we know there's more work to do. Over the past 9 years in Minnesota, even though we've made progress on the number of serious injuries, fatalities have not decreased. And this year has been no different. As of today, even though traffic volumes have been down due to COVID, we have unofficially had 309 fatalities on Minnesota's roads this year. This means we will not meet this year's goal of 300, and it means the fatality plateau in Minnesota continues. So we know we have work to do in the coming years. To help guide our work, we want to learn from those that have had success in their own efforts to improve traffic safety. We're therefore tremendously excited. I'm so excited I put a tie on today for the first time in 7 months. We're so excited to have with us today representatives from road safety programs in both Sweden and Norway, 2 countries that lead the world right now in the lowest traffic fatality rate. So thank you to Euro and Mats for taking time to share with us some of the key elements of your success. We look forward to learning from you today in our quest to improve traffic safety in Minnesota. Before we start the official webinar topic, the TZD program is excited to recognize one of our 2020 award winners. Today, we are recognizing the 2020 Distinguished Public Leader Award recipient, Christine Hernandez. Christine has demonstrated constant vision, leadership, and knowledge of traffic safety to benefit society and make Minnesota roads safer for everyone. Specifically, this award represents Christine's leadership and development of the TZD Regions program. Her initiative in starting a TZD Regions pilot program has proven to be so successful that it is now known as a nationally recognized best practice. And I should note, we are excited to have now 9 regional coordinators in Minnesota after adding 4 more in 2019. Christine has not only shown initiative in her work, but has also mentored and supported our regional coordinators in their efforts to improve traffic safety across the state. So a heartfelt congratulations, Christine. Would you like to say a few words?
Thanks, Brian. And I want to thank Brad Estoshan for this nomination as well. It's very humbling knowing that this program wouldn't have happened without the passion and leadership from so many in Minnesota, as well as the willingness from our friends in Sweden who shared their Vision Zero program with us back in 2003. When my supervisor, now Ray Succio, asked me to coordinate the first ever TZD region, we went to Kathy Swanson, who was the director at the Office of Traffic Safety at the time. I asked her, what is TZD and what am I supposed to do? And she said, well, it's squishy. So I was a little nervous, or maybe a lot, because I don't do squishy very well. The leadership at MnDOT and Public Safety and Department of Health, like Bernie Arsenault, Kathy, and Mark Kindy, provided the vision needed to forge ahead. And in Southeast Minnesota, now Ray and Captain Randy Slinger set up the framework for the region and truly believed that we would succeed in reducing traffic-related deaths on our roadways. Setting up the regions was a 10-year process. It took leaders like Sue Porter, Dwayne Hill, John Hughesby, Greg Oss, and their state patrol captains' commitment to create the next TZD regions and find the right coordinators to help build them. So the success of the program took many, many dedicated people who are as passionate about traffic safety as I am. You're going to hear more about them as we move through these webinars. As for me, I get by with a little help from my traffic safety friends. So again, thank you for this award.
Thank you, and congratulations again, Christine. And now I'd like to turn it over to our moderator for our session today, Stephanie Malinoff. Stephanie's the Senior Director of Engagement and Technical Assistance for the Center of Transportation Studies at the University of Minnesota. Stephanie?
Great, thank you, Brian. Again, as Brian mentioned, my name is Stephanie Malinoff. I work at the Center for Transportation Studies at the University of Minnesota. And I'm so honored to be here with you all today and to hear what our wonderful speakers have to share with us about things that they're doing in their own countries that we may be able to learn from today. The title of today's webinar is Traffic Safety Trailblazers, Lessons Learned from Norway and Sweden. Both Norway and Sweden have been pioneers in traffic safety, both past and present. They've been working towards zero deaths for decades and continue to change the way they approach traffic safety in their countries to try and save even more lives on their roadways. They've been extremely successful in their work, and there is a lot that we can learn from their efforts. I know we often hear that the political climate and culture in the United States around traffic safety is different than it is overseas with our international partners. We can't seem to pass the same laws, we can't show the same PSAs, the list goes on. And that is a reality that we continue to face and a challenge that we're always working to overcome. But in the meantime, I challenge us all today to listen to our speakers with the perspective of what can we do? What can we learn? What can we apply in Minnesota and in our own work? My goal is that each and every one of you walk away today with at least one nugget of work you can take back to your day-to-day lives. I should note that both of our speakers today will likely use the Vision Zero terminology as opposed to Towards Zero Deaths, as that is the name of the program in their countries. However, the principles of their work are very similar to our efforts in Minnesota. A collaborative approach to traffic safety, including all of the E's that ultimately reduces death and serious injury on our roadways. I know there are many different titles to these programs, many different naming conventions, and that all can be very confusing and frustrating, but we're all here together for one purpose, and that is to save lives. Let me start with just a few announcements about our webinar before I turn it over to our speakers. We are recording today's webinar, and a link to that recording will be posted on the TZD website shortly. If anyone runs across any technical issues, or if you have questions throughout the presentation today, please click on that Q&A box that you should see on the lower part of your screen and type your question or your technical issue there. Our intention is to hold questions until after both presenters are finished. However, I will be monitoring the content that comes through that Q&A box, and if it seems appropriate to interject with a question during one of our speakers, I will certainly do that. Continuing education credits are available for today's webinar. The CLE credits, PDH hours, and post credits are all available. If you want a form to keep for your records for any of these continuing education credits, please navigate your way to the Minnesota Towards Zero Deaths webpage, and you will find a link to forms that you can download and keep on our website. For our law enforcement friends, post-credit is available today. We're asking that you please read these 2 paragraphs that are on the screen in front of you. If you're watching the webinar live, we are asking that you watch in its entirety today, and then the University of Minnesota will submit an affidavit of attendance to the post board for you. If you're watching a recorded version of the webinar, please complete the affidavit of attendance on the TZD website and email it to tzd@umn.edu. Instructions are on the website if you need more information as well. So now on to our topic for today, traffic safety trailblazers, lessons learned from Norway and Sweden. We have 2 distinguished speakers with us today. The first will be Mats Ake Bellin from the Swedish Transport Administration and the KTH Royal Technology Institute. Mats has over 25 years of experience within the Swedish government, primarily working with overall safety policies, strategies, and collaborating with different stakeholders. From 2007 to 2009, Dr. Bellin worked for the World Health Organization in Geneva, where he participated in the development of global road safety strategies and global partnerships. Mats is also the Swedish delegate in the UN Road Safety Collaboration and has served as a policy advisor for many zero-fatality initiatives around the world. Mats also currently serves as director of the Vision Zero Academy at the Swedish Transport Administration. Following Mats, we will welcome Ms. Guro Ranes from the Norwegian Public Roads Administration. Guro is a civil engineer and Masters of Management. After 6 years as a private consultant, she has almost 25 years of experience with the Norwegian Public Roads Administration, and most of those years are working in traffic safety. Guro's main focus in her administration is policymaking and road safety strategies with measures based on the Vision Zero program. I'm going to turn it over to our speakers now. Just a reminder to participants to submit questions through the Q&A box on your screen. Mats, you should be able to go ahead and share your screen and take over.
Thank you very much. It's great to have this opportunity to share some of our experience from Sweden. I could say good morning, but for me it's afternoon actually, and in Sweden now we got the first snow. Let's see here. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yep, now we can, Mats. Thank you. It's working.
Perfect. Okay, let's start then. I want to start with a little bit a global perspective on road safety, and So WHO, they estimated that there is about 1.35 million fatalities per year in road traffic crashes around the world. So this is a huge public health problem. And the WHO, they doing all this list of these evil kind of things that can happen to the humankind. You know, you will find things like stroke or heart attack and that sort of thing on this list. But on this list, you will also find road traffic injuries. So the road traffic injuries is the 8th leading cause of death around the world. And for young people, from children and young adults in age 5 to 29 years, road traffic injuries is actually the leading cause of death. So it's a huge problem. But as you might know, there is huge difference between different countries around the world. And if you take United States, also according to WHO, you have about 13 fatalities per 100,000 inhabitants. Minnesota seems to do better. You have around 7 fatalities per 100,000 inhabitants. But countries like Sweden, we have, according to these statistics, we have around 3 fatalities per 100,000 inhabitants. Actually, it's lower right now. It's about 2 fatalities per 100,000 inhabitants. And Sweden, we based our road safety work now on a decision that the Swedish Parliament did in 1997. And that was the first time that any jurisdiction around the world actually started talking about Vision Zero or a safe system. And that is, of course, a very strong ethical imperative. And it says that you can never be ethical acceptable that people are killed or seriously injured when they're moving within the transport system. So from that point of view, the Swedish politicians, they say enough is enough. And that is very important. That is a very important message. But for us who are working with Vision Zero and this decision in 1997 is something much more than just a long-term goal. It's a total new strategy actually, and Vision Zero differs from the way that we traditionally work with safety. And of course, when I do this presentation now, it will be a little bit black and white. In reality, we're still working with lots of traditional approaches, but we are definitely have moved away into something quite different. But let's start with the traditional approach, which is very common internationally and also in Sweden historically. The problem that we try to solve in the traditional approach is the problem with accident or crashes. And when we go deeper into it, when we make in-depth studies of these crashes, we will come up with conclusions such as 90% of all crashes is due to human factors. And that has been a mantra, and I say that in a critical way, actually. It's been a mantra, and therefore, in a traditional approach, we put the ultimate responsibility on safety on us as human individual road users. So if something goes wrong out there, you can always find someone to blame. And our strategies has been very much focused on the idea to creating the perfect human being who always doing the right thing. And we have been focused very much on make individual road users to take responsibility through enforcement, through regulation, through education. And the traditional approach is also very much based on the idea that people don't want safety. So and we don't think really that we can solve this problem. So we have been quite happy if we can step by step reduce the risk. But although we haven't been so explicit about it, we think that there is a kind of optimum of fatalities and serious injuries. It's a kind of price that we have to pay for our mobility. And Vision Zero as a strategy challenge all this aspect, I would say. The first thing is that in a Vision Zero, the problem that we try to solve is not the problem with crashes per se. The problem we try to solve is a problem that people get killed and seriously injured. And the reason why people get killed and serious injuries, according to a Vision Zero framework, is because people are people. People will make mistakes. We have young people, we have old people, we have all kinds of people using this road transport system. And we know also that we are, as human beings, we are quite fragile. We have a certain tolerance against kinetic energy. And I used to take one example, a concrete example, to show the difference between this traditional approaching Vision Zero. If you have a typical 4-lane intersection and you have crashes in that intersection, the traditional approach is to put up a traffic light. And that traffic light will definitely reduce the number of crashes in that intersection. But those who will happen will be very severe, because the typical scenario is that someone by mistake go against this red light, and due to the high speed, the outcome will be very severe. But if you make a roundabout, the number of crashes might actually increase a little bit because it becomes a little bit more difficult to drive in a roundabout, but those who will happen will be less severe. And traffic light and a roundabout might actually be the difference between life and death. So in a Vision Zero framework, the ultimately responsibility for road safety or for safety is on us as system designers. And of course, the road users still have a responsibility, but when something goes wrong, it goes back to us as system designer. So in a country like Sweden now, we are in a process to moving some of these traditional behavior problems. Take an example like drink and driving, for example, that we have defined as a behavior modification problem, and move it to a design problem. You know, Sweden, we were one of the first, I think Norway actually was the first country in the world who set up a certain threshold for how much alcohol you are allowed to have it in your blood when you drive the car. And in that time, in 1940 in Sweden, it was 0.8. Then we have lowered this threshold from 0.8 to 0.5, and now it's 0.2. And we also have random breath controls and lots of information and so on. And it works very well. So if the police go out and do random controls of the traffic, you will find that 99.8% of the traffic is sober. But if you go in and make in-depth studies of fatal crashes, you will find that still 25% of all fatal crashes is alcohol related. So we don't have a social norm problem, but we still have a safety problem. So in a Vision Zero perspective, we think that one of the most effective countermeasure we have for alcohol related crashes is a middle barrier. I will show you some example later. Because a middle barrier don't care if you are distracted, if you are fatigued, or if you are influenced by alcohol or whatever. And it will not prevent the crash in itself, but it will prevent it from end up in a catastrophe. And of course, we can't put up middle barrier or that kind of solution everywhere. So we think in the future you will find some kind of alcohol or some kind of technology that will prevent people from drink and driving, and that will be as common as a seat belts. So that is what we're working with now. And Vision Zero is also based on the idea that people want safety. When we talk with people, when we start a dialogue, when we talk with parents, when they get kids to school and so on, we see that there is a huge demand actually for safety, but we need to be creating more visibility for it. And of course, in the long run, we would like to eliminate fatalities and serious injuries. And when we started this journey in late 90s, it was very much a kind of visions, but we're getting more and more serious about it because we see that we have solutions, especially for certain environments that we can really achieve a Vision Zero. And also with all this technology, if we take advantage of this technology, we can really creating a safe system. So this was actually what the Swedish Parliament adopted in 1997. But a policy is just a policy, as you know. It's a piece of paper, and it's a different story to go from policy to action. But fortunately, we have been able to do that also in Sweden, and it started in the urban area. And this curve shows if you get hit by a car in 50 kilometers, the risk that you get killed is more than 80%. If you get hit by a car in 30 kilometers, the risk is less than 10%. And this is really the scientific base for a policy like Vision Zero. It's the kinetic energy and what impact it has on us as humans. And but people don't really people don't have any perception of this, you know. If you go in your everyday in 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 or 70 in your car, you don't have any perception of kinetic energy, and that is something dangerous. So when you have a environment like this, you know, it's a typical urban area somewhere in Sweden, at least you have a sidewalk and you have the zebra crossing, and the default speed in this environment used to be 50 kilometers. And we as experts, we know that if you get hit by this car now, you can be killed instantly. So one mistake from unprotected or the driver of the car can end up in a total catastrophe. But people don't have this perception because we don't understand this problem with kinetic energy. And if we could see this more in a different way, as heights, for example, because we as human beings, we have a very strong feelings for heights. We know that when most people have that feeling. We would, if we could see kinetic energy just like we see height, it would look like this, you know. And you can imagine what kind of demand on different countermeasures for solving this problem. And it is also very obvious that this zebra crossing, this white paper on the roads, is a very dangerous part of our road transport system, actually. And when we in late 90s started to talk with our traffic engineers around in our municipalities about these risk curves and how people perceive risk with kinetic energy, we had a very good discussion, and we can see the results now. When you go out in traffic in some municipalities in Sweden, you will find lots of speed bumps, lots of traffic calming, lower speed limits, lots of roundabouts, lots of special areas where you give priority to unprotected road users, basically to control for harmful energy, and you set the standards according to the unprotected road users. But the Vision Zero in Sweden was national policy, so it's not only urban area. We also have done lots of things when it comes to the rural area. And we used to have a large network of these roads. They are 13 meters wide, and we used to have allowed 110 kilometers on these roads. And if you calculate the risk on these roads, the number of crashes per kilometer driven, the road engineers, my colleagues within the previous Swedish road administration, they would say that this is a safe road. But when you ask people, when you ask the citizens, they will, lots of this part of this network, they would call death roads. Because the typical scenario was that someone did a crazy overtake and end up in a head-on collision, and due to the high speed, the outcome was very severe. And our strategy to try to solve this problem was to educate people how to do safe overtakes, get the police to enforce it, and so on. But to be honest, it didn't quite work. At least it didn't end up in a safe system, you know. So we came up with a different solution when we start to put up this middle barrier here. It's a wire barrier, and sometimes you have 2 lanes, and sometimes you have 1 lane, and then they change every kilometers or something like. So you can always do a safe overtake of a truck, for example. And the difference in risk between these two environments is more. This barrier road is more than 90% safer than the previous one. So it works very well from a safety point of view. And of course, we could maybe solve this problem also with motorways, because we know that motorways is very safe roads. But a motorway in that time in Sweden cost us about 1 billion Swedish crown per saved life. And the first 2+1 road that we built was about 30 million Swedish crown per saved life. So they were extremely cost effective, I would say. And now when you go around in Sweden, we have more than 3,000 kilometers with these 2+1 roads. And we also have one of the largest, we don't call them speed cameras, we call them safety cameras. We have one of the largest traffic safety camera program in the world, more than 3,000 kilometers with this. We do it in a different way than most countries. We don't catch people in it, but I don't have time to talk about it in depth, but we do in a quite different way that most countries doing with these cameras. We also, this curve shows the share of traffic volume with medium barriers or with speed limits above 80 kilometers. So due to the fact that we have invested lots in 2+1 roads, these go up. But here you see in 2009, it's a jump here. And that is due to that we also started to lower some of our roads from 90 kilometers per hour to 80 kilometers. Because for us, setting the speed is according to the design of the roads. That's the major criteria now for setting the speed. We also have worked a lot with safe vehicles and pushed for that. And here you see the passenger cars with the highest Euro NCAP rating, and you see how it increased a lot. This curve, I think, is quite interesting because it both shows the share of alcohol-related crashes, that this curve, and it also shows the total number. And we believe, and that is a bit hypothesis, that this share is more influenced by police enforcement. And we have the police was very active for a few years with random breath controls. But it also shows that sometimes it's very difficult to get a long sustainable strategy with the police. They doing things for 3-4 years, and then they need their resources for other things and criminals and so on, and then they start to withdraw from the traffic, and that happened a little bit in Sweden for the last years now. So the shares starting to go up again, but not the number, and that is due to we think this middle barrier program, because that has a more impact. The general road safety work in the environment has an impact also for alcohol-related crashes. So they are the middle barriers benefit for alcohol-related crashes also. So when we started this journey in the late 90s, we had about 7 fatalities per 100,000 inhabitants. And Sweden had one of the safest road transport system already in that time. And most people thought that it was not possible to be better. But this curve show that now we have went from 7 fatalities to about 2 fatalities per 100,000 inhabitants. And So that shows that even if you are top performance, you can still do it better. But as the same as in Minnesota now, we had a time, a period now of a little bit, we have reached a kind of plateau for our road safety work, and we lost some of our momentum, and therefore the Swedish government have decided to renew their commitment to Vision Zero in 2016. So now we are preparing for the next phase. Now we focus on 2030 and take the next step for road safety. Yes, as Stephanie said in the beginning, we can see now how similar kind of approaches now spreading around the world. You will find it in the UN Decade of Action. Now we are preparing the second Decade of Action plan, and also in European Union White Paper for Transport. They said close to zero 2050. OECD also talking about this zero road death, and World Road Associations, WHO, New York, of course, and Auckland. So this idea somehow spreading around the world. So yeah. Thank you. I think I stopped there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. It's really a great presentation. I did have one question specific to you, maybe before we move on to Guro. Sorry, I of course just closed the box. How were speeds and speed limits set in Sweden prior to the set the speed to the design of roads? This person was noting that setting speed limits in Minnesota seems to be according to driver comfort. So interested in how you've done that in the past.
No, so if you go back historically in Sweden, setting the speed and the criteria for setting speed have changed over the time. And when we started setting the speed in Sweden, we were looking to you, at you guys. So we set a lots of roads according to the 85 percentile. And basically, when you do that, you would like to get rid of those who speeding a lot. So you're putting your speed according to where you have 85% of your traffic, that will become the speed limit. And then in the 70s, Sweden started to use more crash data, accident data. So if you have a very long straight lanes, for example, then you could allow higher speed because you have lower crash per kilometer driven or things like that. So you use that kind of criteria. And that has basically been there since the 70s. But when we start to work with Vision Zero, that have a revolutionary effect on setting the speed, because the core in Vision Zero, at least in the Swedish Vision Zero then, is to control for harmful energy. So we setting the speed according to the design of the road transport system and the vehicles that we have, of course, and we try to find a balance there. So therefore, for example, a very clear message that we have now is that if you would like to have higher speed than 80 kilometers, you have to prevent for head-on collisions. If you can't do that, then you can't have higher speed than 80 kilometers. So that's why we working a lot with these 2+1 roads, for example, because that is good both from safety and mobility perspective. So I think that is one very, very important change in the way our mindset of things is how we're setting the speed limits.
Great, thank you. And it seems like a good chance for me to put in a quick plug for a future webinar in our series. On October 29th,
Absolutely.
we will be having a webinar on safe systems. We'll have a few experts from across the country coming in to talk a little bit more about that approach and kind of how it's similar and how it's different from TZD and the types of things that we can be thinking about now. But it aligns very much with what you're talking about, Matt. So thank you. All right, Guru, you're up next. I think you should be able to go ahead and share your screen and you should be set to go. And one other thing, let me just add, I'm sorry, I did get another message through the chat. Just a little bit of some comparison kilometers per hour to miles per hour. So, you know, obviously with the transition or the difference here in the United States, for those of you who haven't already done a quick Google search or don't have that information top of mind, 80 kilometers an hour is about 50 miles per hour. 110 kilometers an hour is about 68 or 70 miles an hour. And those slower speed limits, 30 kilometers an hour, when Mats was talking about some of the pedestrian information in the curve he was showing us, 30 kilometers an hour is about 18 miles per hour. So just a little bit of context for you there. All right, Guro, it's all yours.
Thank you. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can. Guro, we can see the presenter version of your screen.
Okay, I'll change that. Just a second. Oh, we did the preset. Let's see. I'll try once again.
Not a problem. It's always Murphy's Law. As much as we practice ahead of time, when we're live, it never quite goes exactly as we anticipate. There we go. That's
then
perfect.
This one is better. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm very appreciative of being invited to speak to you. A lot of the way we are working and thinking with the road traffic safety in Norway is very similar to what they do in Sweden. We have adopted the Vision Zero, very much alike the way they are doing in Sweden. So Mats has now been talking about kind of the fundamentals about the Vision Zero and the way it had changed our way to approach the work on traffic safety. I would like to talk more about how we go about implementing and taking this way of thinking and the knowledge and all the things we know about what's working and what is good for traffic safety, and how we implement it to take the active steps forward. As Mats was saying, Norway and Sweden is doing very well compared to other countries regarding traffic safety. I have some different numbers than maybe than Mats said. He was saying you were about Minnesota was about 70 fatalities per million. My calculation got 65, but it's still in that area. So you would, if you compare to countries in Europe, you would be in the upper half compared to other countries, and like between Portugal and Greece in my slide. Norway and Sweden is in the front, and we have been for quite a long time. But we have not always been doing that well. Just 10 years ago, the Swedes were still doing very good, but Norway were a bit behind. We had close to the double of the risk of dying in traffic compared to the number of inhabitants than the Swedes. But we have, as you can see, we have made quite I've stolen from Paul. It shows that Minnesota has reached kind of a plateau the last 8 to 9 years and are struggling to take the next step. This is not very unusual. It's when we have been through a period where we are doing quite well, it's quite common to kind of reach a plateau. And you have to rethink the way you are working to take the next step, as also Mats was talking about. We can see the same in Europe. Europe had a very nice and quite a steep declining path of the number of fatalities, but around 2013 it faded away, and it's the decline has been quite slim the last years. The ambition for the European Union is a reduction of 50%, and of course they will not be able to reach that goal. In Norway, we have been able to have still a decline of the number of fatalities, but we can also see kind of a plateauing or leveling off the last years. 3 last years there has been next to no development. It's the same number of fatalities, but still we will reach the number of 50% reduction during the last decade, and we are quite happy about that. And I will I take you through the key elements of how we are working with road safety in Norway. And again, it's in principle quite like and much the same way that the Swedes are working. First, it's the Vision Zero. It's a key element, and it's been a huge support for our work because it's changed the way we are thinking about road safety. It has shifted the focus from the crashes and the accidents towards what we can do to eliminate the severe accidents with the fatalities and severe injuries. That is our main focus, and that's also having to do with the measures we are using to get forward. It's been a big motivation for our work, and I'm quite sure that we would never be able to have the high level of traffic safety that we do have today in Norway if we did not have the Vision Zero as our guidance towards the way we are thinking and working. The second item I would bring up is the interim targets. And as I saw, you also have an interim target in Minnesota, and that's well documented that those who set interim targets and are setting goals for a period of time, that they are doing better than those who don't. If you don't have a concrete target other than doing better than you did last year or the year before, the decrease and the momentum of your work will not be the same. As you can see in the graph, we are a bit above the target line, but still we are having almost the same the progress we need to be able to say that we are on track. We have interim targets of a maximum of 500 fatalities and serious injuries in 2024, and a maximum of 350 fatalities and serious injured in 2030. If you keep on in the same way we are doing now, we will be able to do that, but it's quite an ambitious target. And I say that because we are already among the best performing countries in the world. So taking the next step, even though it sounds or looks like it's not that much, it's going to be quite difficult. So also in Norway, we are doing and rethinking our way, the way we are working with the Vision Zero, because we have to take the next step, and that's it's not enough just to do what we did last year. The third element I would focus on is the key performance indicators. Just focusing on the numbers of killed and injured in traffic, then you don't see what elements are making you move in the right direction. So we have quite a set of performance indicators which we follow to see whether or not we are on track in different areas. We have, for instance, this is not all of them, but some of them. We have KPIs on seatbelts wearing, on speed limit compliance, targeting also the vehicles, and of course also the roads. And in the same way as Mats was talking about, we have a goal on the percentage of motor vehicle on national roads with the speed limits at 70 and higher, that has a medium barrier. It's the same way of thinking as the Swedes. We want to move the traffic with the higher speed limits to the roads with the medium barrier, because a collision in high speeds is almost always fatal or with high consequences. The fourth element is to take into use all the wide spectrum of proven measures. And you have to attack on a broad basis. The road, of course, it's often the most logical one to take on, but it's not the only one. The control of both the police and other forces are important. Both, of course, the use of alcohol and driving under the influence. And I will particularly also put emphasis on controlling the speed. The speed is a key element to be successful. And the picture on the right side here is the picture of a bus driver putting on his seatbelt. The use of seatbelts in private cars is quite high in Norway, but we still are lagging on heavy goods vehicle and also the passengers of buses. So that's where we have put our efforts lately. If you are doing all this, that's not enough. You have to follow up and check whether or not you are having the results you are hoping for. Not just counting the number of fatalities and severe injuries, but checking whether or not the development on your key performance indicators are moving in the right direction. So I have, as an example, showing the graph with the development of the speed limit compliance. And we have had over the last 15 years a very solid and positive development of the speed compliance in Norway. 15 years ago, it was 45% of the traffic which were following the speed limit. Yes, last year it was more than 62%. So 6 out of 10 drivers are keeping to the speed limit. And we are quite convinced that this is the high proportion of the traffic keeping to the speed limits. It's one of the key elements that are making the Norwegian roads safe. We also make follow up on the counties, not just on, we just don't have key performance indicators on a national level, but we also have them for the counties. It's 11 of them in Norway. And we use a simple color representation to make whether or not, so we can see whether or not you are doing well or not. Green is of course within the goals, and yellow is okay. Red, then you have to take action, because this is not good enough to be able to reach the target set for each county. Then it's the commitment and long-term planning. This picture is quite symbolic of that. It's on the left, it's the Minister of Transport, and on the right, it's the Director of the Norwegian Public Roads Administration, my last boss. And the director of the Public Roads Administration, he is delivering to the Minister of Transport the National Plan of Action. It's a document that we are making every 4 years, and it's a compilation of a lot of the measures that different participants are saying that are going to do. It's a quite an important document. The Norwegian Public Roads Administration, it's the lead agency, and we have found that it's quite useful and helpful to have a lead agency which makes it that the work continues. It's also important to have central key stakeholders. On a national level, it's to have the police, the health, the education, lead NGO, and also the counties. And we also have a wide spectrum of other stakeholders. And the way you were talking about the participants on this webinar and the organizations behind organizing the webinars, I understand it's a lot of the same stakeholders that are taking part in the work, and that's very promising, I think. As I said, it's important to also have a wide range of proving measures. You can't solve the problem just by focusing on the road user and risk behavior. And that's not enough, because the human being will still make mistakes. We can get a lot of help from the vehicle and the police, from the control of the vehicles and the road users. But often it's very helpful to have infrastructure and the maintenance also of the infrastructure, that if you make a mistake, the result is not a death. You just get a less severe accident, and design the system in such a way that it's easy to do the right thing and difficult to do the wrong thing. And if you do the wrong thing, that we try to reduce the consequences. To sum up, it's important to have a systematic and evidence-based approach. I think it's one of the key success factors for one of the reasons we are doing very well in Norway. It's important to have commitment from key stakeholders and have a long-term perspective. You have to be very persistent and be able to do and reproduce the good measures over a long period of time to get success. Then it's important to have a lead agencies and dedicated stakeholders. In Norway, it's not just the Public Roads Administration, even though we are by far the biggest agency. If we didn't have the police, the health health directorate, and the health sector with us, or the lead NGO, for instance, on board, our measures would not be sufficient to make consistent progress. And also underline the importance of this wide range of proving measures. We have the knowledge we have. It's enough to make sure that we can introduce and continue to do proven measures, but also try to improve and try out new measures. So thank you for now.
What a great way to end a presentation, Guru. I sure wish I was there. Somebody did mention in the chat box that it is starting to snow here as I look out my window in Minnesota. So I think it was Mats who mentioned some snow was starting over in Sweden, and we're getting it here in Minnesota too. So thank you for the great presentation. It's time for Q&A. I am going to apologize ahead of time because our audience did not disappoint and we have a good number of questions. I will do my best to get through all of them. There might be some that we don't get to, and we will make sure that folks have contact information for both of our speakers today if you want to follow up with them offline on any of the topics or questions that we maybe aren't able to get to. So I'm going to start with one that I believe is for Mats, but Guro, feel free to chime in as well. The question says, under the traditional model, you stated responsibility is placed on the individual driver. Under Vision Zero, it's on the system designer. Keeping that in mind, how do you still advocate for responsibility of each driver, since at the end of the day, a road may be safe by design, but drivers and their decisions are still the variable in the question?
So we don't withdraw when, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. So we don't withdraw any responsibility. We add another layer of responsibility. So of course, if you look at the regulation and everything, and you go back also historically, you will see that we have put ultimately responsibility on us as individual road users. And we didn't used to have a system perspective, a system designer responsibility. So what Vision Zero did, at least more from a policy perspective, was to put ultimately responsibility on the systems designers, but the road users still have a responsibility. But the thing is that when things goes wrong, it goes back, so to say, to the system designer. That's why we get a different loop now when we're talking about drinking driving. You know, we can keep working with our strategies. For example, Sweden has working with the behavior modification and that sort of thing for many years. As I said, we started already in 1940 with the regulation around threshold and so on, and we can keep do that better. But when we still see that people are drinking driving, we have to think out of the box. That's why I said things like, look, a barrier or a traffic calming solution will have an impact even on those who are drinking driving or fatigue or distract or whatever. So it's just to put another layer on our strategy, I would say. So.
Great, thank you. Guro, did you have any additional thoughts?
It's much the same as Mats said, but in the Norwegian version of the Vision Zero, we put emphasis on the shared responsibility, and that's also, of course, also include that as me as an individual, I have a responsibility to do my best when I am out driving or walking or cycling. But as part of the Norwegian Public Roads Administration, I also have a responsibility to use the measures and do what I can within the frame of my organization. So it's a shared responsibility, but we have to rely on and encourage all the traffic users to do their best to obey by the traffic rules.
Great, thank you. Mats, I'm going to start with you on this one. I have a couple of questions around the safety cameras that you mentioned. One of them, was Parliament involved in the safety camera concept? Did they have to sign off on it?
Not the Parliament, but the government had to do it.
Okay.
So they have to be involved in it. But it's a very interesting thing, you know, because it's when you compare, for example, with Australia, Victoria was one of the first jurisdiction in the world with a large-scale camera program. And they choose a mobile camera system and they're moving around them in the Melbourne, and they catch lots of people, about 200,000 per month. And when you get your ticket, you talk with your friends and your family and so on, and you're creating a sense of there's cameras everywhere. But it was only 40, 50 cameras to the start. But the thing is that and it works very well from a safety point of view, no doubt about it. But the thing is that every time there is election in Victoria, these bloody cameras come up. And politicians, they do a career on get rid of this camera. So they haven't been able to expand the program. It's almost the same that they introduced in the early 90s. In Sweden, we use not mobile cameras. We use stretch cameras. We put lots of cameras after a stretch, and we say that it's due to the safety record of this road, and probably in the future we might do something about the road. We maybe put up a middle barrier or whatever. So the problem is not the driver themselves. The problem is that it's too high speed according to the safety standard of the road. So and we put up signs and everything. So people know when they are in a section with these cameras, and we don't catch people. We catch about 200,000 per year, but we don't have to catch people because the compliance on these stretches now has increased from 50 to 90% of these stretches. So it works very well from a safety point of view, and people think it's fair. So we don't have this political discussion about to get rid of this camera. It's the opposite. Now people want cameras. So we expand this program. When we started, it was 600 cameras, and now it's more than 3,000 cameras. So it's different mindset in the way that we work with. We nudge people more to keep the speed than through this kind of old model of deter people from speeding, so to say. So,
are there any repercussions for those who are caught on the camera? Are there fines? Do you use the stories that come out like you've been telling us today to try and do some positive social norming? What's the repercussion or for the person who maybe is caught speeding?
So yes, so you get the fine, of course, and the camera is randomly on and off. So you don't know if you're on a stretch, if the camera is on or off. But the thing is that is not to catch people is not the most important from the safety point of view. The most important is to get people to keep the speed. And if you increase the compliance from 50 to 90%, then that's very good from a safety point of view. And then, of course, those who will speeding in that system, they will sooner or later they will be catch. And we also use some police between these cameras and so on. But it's for normal. We call them Svensson. A typical Swedish person is Svensson. This normal Svensson, they think it's okay, it's fair, it's nudged them to keep the speed because they don't really understand why they should speed, but it's a little bit tougher than the signs, but they don't want to be catching them.
Yeah. And is most speed enforcement done by police officers or by these safety cameras? Do you have a sense?
Yeah. So most of them is through speed cameras now, safety cameras, I would say, and the whole setup with these safety cameras is interesting itself because it's the Swedish Transport Administration who owns these cameras, who pay for them to set up this. So for us, it's a kind of traffic engineering kind of solution. But when you have catch someone, we have an office in north of Sweden. They take care of those who so to say criminals, but the whole system is owned and operated by the road engineers.
Great. Guro, I'm going to start with you on the next question. We've had a lot come in around speed. I'm going to kind of stick to that theme. The person who asked the question is interested in both countries, but how do you get drivers to comply with the speed limit, especially reduced speeds? Again, we talked a little bit about enforcement. We talked a little bit about the cameras, but Guro, if you wouldn't mind starting and talking about how you guys have been successful, I'm assuming, in helping drivers comply with speed limit.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, both the police and the speed cameras are useful tools to keep people obey by the speed limits, but we cannot have police all over the place and speed cameras all over the place, and we don't really want to, because we want people to keep the right speed by themselves. Reducing the speed, especially in the city centers and in the towns and the suburban areas, it's about education, I would say. It's getting people to understand why the speeds are set the way they are, and that no one wants to risk. One thing is their own life, but also their lives of others, and making people understand that if you are driving in 50 kilometers an hour in a suburban area where there are children going to school and playing and old people moving around, and they are quite vulnerable. If you hit them in 50, they die. Yeah, and that's why we set the speed limit to 30 or 40 kilometers an hour, and getting people to understand why we are doing that. And it's the same with the speeds, the general speed outside urban areas. It's 80 kilometers an hour in Norway, and on some roads we have 70. And telling people that the reason it's 70 is because there are too many accidents there. So they get an inner motivation for keeping the speed limits. They're keeping the speed limit not because they are afraid to be caught by the police or the speed cameras, but because they want to. You know, it's the right thing to do. It's a smart thing to do.
Guro, in Norway, are the counties allowed to set their own speed limits? I'm sorry, I don't think I heard you say that. Or is it a national directive?
It's the Public Roads Administration that sets the speed limits both on national and county roads.
So one of the questions that a participant asked was how easily speed limits are able to be adjusted or in particular lowered on roadways. Is it an easy process? Is it a difficult process? Does it happen often?
It usually happens when we have these changes in the way we are setting the speed limits. We are every now and again we are modifying the rules for what speeds to be set on different kinds of roads, and when we do that, it's quite a major change. But there is always the need of changing the speed limit if the use of the road is different, whether or not you are built a new school, it's a new intersection, it's the volume of the traffic, it's higher, it's more heavy goods vehicles, for instance. In principle, it's quite easy to change the speed limits. It's a formal procedure that you have to go through and get consent of the police. Usually, it's no big deal.
Great, Mats. How about in Sweden?
So we have done huge changes, and we are in the middle of one right now, because as I show on my slides, that we have done lots of these 2+1 roads, and the road system look a little bit different from Norway. We have much more wider roads, I would say. A larger part of the network is wider and higher speed from that perspective also. And on these national roads, we were able to do a lots of investment in these 2+1 roads. And the good thing with that is that we could keep the speed or even increase the speed a little bit on some part of the network. So you get not only safety, you get safe mobility actually. And so that was important. But right now we have the next phase in the implementation of Vision Zero, and we're getting into more regional roads. And in the regions in Sweden, it's the region who decide for the investments, but not setting the speed limits. So now we are in a situation where the national administration, the Swedish Transport Administration, we are lowering the speed limits because they are not safe enough, these regional roads. And the politicians, the local politicians now get very upset about this. So there is a huge discussion, debate about it. But it's not about safety, I would say. Well, let us have unsafe mobility. The discussions right now is actually we also would like safe mobility. So we also would like to have more investment money to the regional roads so we can keep the speed on our roads. So that's the good thing. But I think it's very good that we have this discussion now. As I said in my presentation, Vision Zero is very much about controlling harmful energy. And we can do that in a different way. We can do it through barriers, seat belts or airbags or whatever. Or we can try to lower the speed, increase the speed compliance, or we can reduce the speeds. But everything, it's the same kind of target. And if we are not succeeded in that, then we will not have a safe system, I would say. So that's why speed and all the things around speed become very important topic, I think. Right. Yeah. But I would say, when I'm talking about this, sometimes it sounds like a very easy process. Everyone is happy and they think it's great with these visions here. That's not the case. It has been lots of conflicts actually on the way. Not so much the politicians and the citizens, much more professionals. As within our organization, among road engineers or all these experts on human behavior modifications and so on. So it's been lots of tensions, I think, in the implementation. Yeah.
Interesting. Really good points. Guru, I'm gonna move off the speed topic for a little bit and ask you the next question. This participant says Norway is going to electric cars. Is there any impact, positive or negative, on traffic safety?
Yeah, I think Norway is one of the countries with the highest percentage of electric cars. It's quite highly promoted by the government. And from the new cars, it's 50%, more than 50% of all new cars sold at the moment it's electric. In the first year when the electric cars came, they were not as well. They were the safety elements in the first electric cars. They were not that good. It was usually small cars, and they did not have the same elements and safety built in the car as the usual normal cars. But we see now the new electric cars, they are just the same as the old cars, the regular cars. It's the same models. They just switch out the engine. So it's Volkswagen Golf, which is very common in at least in Norway. They look just the same. Whether or not it's diesel or petrol or gas, some of the gas or electric, it's just the same. It's the same safety elements built in the car.
Yeah. How about self-driving vehicles? Any thoughts or reactions on how those might play into the Vision Zero strategy in your country?
we talk about that quite a lot because some say, and I do agree with them in the long term, that self-driving cars or autonomous cars in the future, they will solve a lot of the problems that we do have today, because they will not speed, they will not drive under the influence. So a lot of the human errors that we are struggling with today, they will be eliminated. But we will get some new difficulties with the technology that also might fail. But the number of mistakes will be far less with an autonomous car. But I think it's the period in between from where we are today and my guess is will be 20 years because you have to shift all the cars before you are able to really take the benefit out of it. 90%, 80-90% of the car have to be self-driving before you really can take the benefit out.
Mats, I'm going to start with you on this question. It circles back to a comment you were making just a couple minutes ago about, trying to get, in particular, practitioners on board. And this participant asks, how does either of your administrations keep dedicated stakeholders focused on the goals of Vision Zero year after year? How do you keep partner roles defined and focused so that everyone works together efficiently towards Vision Zero without overlapping on tasks or causing confusion?
No, I think that's what you've seen when you start to plateauing. That it's easier when we were made a progress and we were somehow catching our own success, so to say. And then, at least in the Swedish context, then in 2008, 2009. 2010, we start to do huge changes of the transport sector in Sweden. So we start to merge different government agencies together. For example, the Swedish Road Administration merged together with the Railway Administration, and they're also creating a new agency who is responsible for regulation in all transport modes and so on. And in that process, we discovered that the Vision Zero somehow, probably due to the fact that we have been so successful, it didn't really be on the agenda anymore. And when now the Swedish government had decided to renew their commitments for Vision Zero in 2016, then they also start to tell us that we need some kind of lead agency for it. Used to be the Swedish Road Administration, but then when they merge all these agencies, it disappeared. But now it's the Swedish Transport Administration again, who is kind of lead agency. And Guru also was mentioned that it's very important to have someone who's really the dedicated stakeholder, who not need to do everything themselves, but needs to be the engine in this road safety work. I think that's very important. I think, and one way to creating every time to keep it on the agenda is that we in Sweden have every year now a result conference where we show politicians and all the stakeholders we monitor the progress of key performance indicator. Just as Guru mentioned for you, we have the same kind of system in Sweden, and that is one way to keep people focus on this on these issues. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to try and sneak one more question in here because I think it's a good one and one that we struggle with a lot in Minnesota, and probably you guys do as well. Has there been any resistance or issues with the high costs for infrastructure to reduce fatal and serious injuries? Has Sweden or Norway established dedicated funding sources to aggressively pursue Vision Zero initiatives and infrastructure? So I don't know if Mats or Guru, maybe I'll start with Mats since your face is on my screen,
Yeah,
and then
okay,
I'll give Guru a minute to respond as well.
I think that was one of the breakthrough for us, actually. I don't know the experience from Norway, but you have to remember that we used to have a NHTSA in Sweden. It was set up in 1968, the Swedish Traffic Safety Office. And that administration was merged into the Swedish Road Administration in 1992. And that, I think, started a process within the Swedish Road Administration, because at least my experience is that was very important to get the engineers into road safety, because they were not really into it, I would say. And that is what I mean with some conflicts. It was a professional conflict on these issues, because and the first step was actually dedicated resources for this 2+1 road, and it needed the decisions from the politicians. But when you look into it, you will see that it's not a road safety intervention, it's a safe mobility intervention. It's good for mobility and it's good for safety. When the engineers, at least in the Swedish Road Administration, talked about what they wanted to do with the money, it was big motorways, tunnels, bridges. And they are extremely expensive. And as I said, a motorway costs about 1 billion Swedish crown per saved life. And these 2+1 roads, they hated that idea. They didn't like it at all, and that was very cost effective from a road safety point of view, and it also keep the mobility. So you need some kind of discussion, and if you look at it, for example, the car industry, they produce new cars every 3 or 4 years. But when you look into road engineering, you will see that some of them using manuals from 1930, 1940 still work. So it's extremely conservative culture, I would say, and you need to break that through, I think, to understand that you have to integrate road safety into the way you do your road engineering business, I think. So this is a very important topic. Yeah. It's also maybe a whole webinar for that.
Exactly. I know I'm looking at the clock and thinking, Guru, I'm sorry, we don't have that much time, but do you have a quick response? We'd love to hear Norway's perspective as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great point from Mats, that's saying that we don't promote road safety as per se. It's often if you build for safe mobility. It's integrated in the way we are building new roads, and also in the way we are maintaining our old ones. So, and it's really, in Norway, we have very little special resources for road safety, road traffic safety. It's a very much integrated way of all we are doing. It's nothing special that some people in the end of the hall is doing. It's something everyone is working with.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So I wish we had a whole nother hour and a half just for questions, but we want to respect everybody's time and get those of us in the United States off to lunch, those of us in Norway and Sweden probably off to happy hour maybe and dinner. But again, thank you all for participating today. There should be a link to an evaluation coming through in the chat box soon if it's not there already. We ask that you please fill that out and give us your open and honest feedback. The TCD leadership team and the conference planning committee really do read all of those responses and use that information as we plan for future webinar series and hopefully statewide conferences next year. If you would like to follow us on social media, here's our Twitter and Facebook addresses. A plug for our next webinar. As Brian mentioned at the very beginning, we have another webinar this afternoon at 1 o'clock Central Time. All of our webinars are available online. You can see the lineup on minnesotatzd.org. They are all free to attend, but you must register in order to get the link to participate. So please go ahead and register for all those webinars. Somebody did ask if the PowerPoints would be available from today's presentation. Yes, they will be. minnesotatzd.org. Navigate your way to today's webinar page and you will find the PowerPoints there. And on behalf of the Minnesota TZD program, thank you so much for joining us in our first webinar of the series. We want to end with this message. We truly do believe that together we can get to zero. Thank you for your time today. We hope that you're able to participate in future webinars. Thank you, everybody.